Alright, so what I wanted to do today was talk about the enemies of Resident Evil 4, more importantly the Ganados, the main enemy of the game, and talk about how they could definitely be a lot more menacing of a threat in the remake compared to the original. If you've seen discussions of Resident Evil 4 before, and if you've seen some of my previous videos, you'll know that everyone kind of agrees that the Ganados, the enemies at the time, were fairly smart compared to other games. They worked together, they would do things to kind of outwit you, and through each area of the game they changed in variation so it was more distinct to that area and they would act differently, and it's something that really keeps the pace of the game quite fresh. Briefly, when the remake was announced and they talked about it a little bit, they said that they'd kind of worked how the enemies would work and behave in terms of the game due to the new kind of movement system and the combat and stuff like that, to make sure they're still a threat while being a bit more modernized for the player to deal with. And we're kind of going to go over what they could be doing with that today. So without any further ado, let's get into it, and here we go. So first, let's talk about again how they work in the original game. So again, each area is distinctive in terms of how they react to you. So you've got the first part of the game in the village. There's hordes of them with like pitchforks and knives and stuff like that. Kind of gang up on you, get very close to you. They also pick up ladders and stuff, break through windows to try and get to you, open doors. So yeah, the very start of the game, not the most clever thing ever, but they're definitely more advanced than zombies, definitely a newer threat. I think the difference from Resident Evil 3 to 4 in terms of enemy type was quite a drastic change for people. They had to play differently. You weren't dealing with like mindless zombies anymore, you were dealing with technically people, just a bit more kind of rage filled. Moving into the next area of the game, the castle section, again, they are still a bit slow on the slow side, but they have more weaponry available to them. So they got shields, they've got like hammers and maces and stuff like that, rocket launchers at some point as well. They're using actual weapons, so they're a bit more armored, a bit more prepared for you, and they're a lot more menacing to take down. And then again, that changes when you get to the island at the end of the game. More weapons, crossbows, tasers, like stun rods and stuff like that, as well as your shields, and also armored as well. So some enemies in that area can't be headshotted as easy because they're wearing helmets. So they definitely up the ante again near the end of the game. Obviously included within the normal enemy types, there's your certain kind of special enemies, so you got your regenerators and your chainsaw men and stuff like that. But I will be making a separate videos on the special enemies of Resident Evil 4 over the next few weeks, so that's something entirely different. But now we've talked about how the Ganados work in the original game, we're going to move on to what they could do in the remake. So with the remake, there's a more advanced movement for the player. So obviously in Resident Evil 4 as it is, you have to kind of be stationary while you shoot and reload, which gives them the opportunity to kind of get closer to you, as well as attack you by throwing things as well. I think with the remake being more of a free-form combat, they'll be a lot more faster, a lot more aggressive. Maybe they'll even add more of them. I think based around the movement system of the new remake alone, that they're going to have to do something with them in terms of the numbers of them to make it still feel like you're overwhelmed like you are in the original game. For example, the intro of the original game, you are very unequipped, you do not have a lot of ammo, and there's a lot of them. And they did the same thing in Resident Evil Village, and it worked really well because the Lycans were more aggressive, they were faster, they were more erratic, they would move in different ways. So doing that with the Ganados in the initial part of the game will really give you an understanding of, okay, we've looked at the original game, we've looked at how the remake works, and we've kind of hit that spot where it feels just like it did before, but obviously with a new movement system and probably a new combat system to go with it. In terms of how they behave and stuff like that, with picking up ladders and coming through windows and stuff like that, maybe do that more, but maybe advance it as well. So let's say you go into a room, go into a house to cover yourself, again, using the beginning of the game as an example. Instead of them just smashing the window and coming through, maybe they just like throw their molotovs and stuff in there with you, rather than throwing themselves through, try to smoke you out. Maybe with the ladders, they can pull them down before you even go up there. So there's like, some are fighting you, and then some are going out of their way to remove ways to enter and exit buildings before you can even try and do it. Like, that would be a good way to kind of keep them more aggressive, as well as kind of make you feel a bit more claustrophobic as well, because there are so many of them and not a lot of places to go. So yeah, maybe within hordes, some get into a room, others close the door behind you, lock you in with these enemies, and you have to fight them because there is no other way out until you've dealt with that door. So there's plenty of ways to do it. And again, I think those same rules apply with the later sections of the game, when the shields come into place, instead of them like walking towards you with the shields, maybe they block paths you can't get through until you deal with them, box you in, keep that movement or as free as it may be, it's still restricted to where you can and cannot go without being an enemy in your face, you know what I mean? And I think that's my general kind of consensus with how the enemies should react to you in Resident Evil 4 Remake, you know, make them less aggressive, keep them aggressive obviously, but make them kind of smarter than what they're doing already. I know it might be difficult to do that, but you know, if you make them box you in, if you make them restrict where you can move, that old movement, while it's not there anymore, it might actually feel like that compared to the remake. It might feel quite similar to that, but that is just my kind of idea for it. If you guys have any other ideas or suggestions on how they could make the Ganados feel more menacing compared to the original, obviously like I said, they have changed them in some way, we do know that, so just wondering what it is they have done. Do let me know if you have any ideas of your own. I will be covering the special enemies of the game in future videos, so Dr. Salvador, the Chainsaw Twins, the Regenerators and stuff like that. I do want to cover those and see how they would perform and what they would do in the remake. But that is going to do it for this one. Thank you all for coming by and watching. Remember to subscribe for more Resident Evil content, and I'll see you in the next one.